Welcome to the Core Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Kacee Banks, a mindset and positive psychology coach. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to creating happiness from within. So, let's do it. Hello, and welcome back to the show. How many of you have external factors that affect your well-being, whether that's mental health, physical health, or things like that? And I ask that because a lot of times when we talk about wellness, we usually talk about things that we can do for our mental health or physical health. But there are a lot of times that we have these external factors that affect those things, and it becomes hard. And when we talk about wellness, we usually talk about the broad scheme of things, what we should do, what we should incorporate to work on ourselves, how we deal with specific situations and issues that arise that knock us off our course. And one thing that comes up a lot lately, especially in my coaching sessions, have been work issues. And these are external work issues that seem to knock you off your course. They affect everything from personal to professional, and you don't know what to do. And what I hear is, I'm working on myself. I'm doing all the things that I can do. But then how do I deal with this work challenge or challenging coworkers or a difficult boss? Whatever it is, how do I deal with these hard times to help me stay on track and that won't throw me off my development goals? Or when it comes to overall wellness, I don't feel so thrown off. So that's what I want to focus on today. I want to talk about going through common workplace issues because I think this hits home for a lot of us. And I want to start with something that I think we've all faced, which is a difficult boss. Maybe this boss is overcritical. Maybe they're micromanaging. Maybe they're just hard to please. And it just feels like you're walking on eggshells every day. And it varies. Sometimes you get a great boss. Sometimes you get bosses that aren't so great. So on those occasions where you have a not so great boss and somebody says, well, just manage up. And you're like, well, that's hard to do. I need something else to do other than manage up. I'm not getting paid to manage my boss. Vice versa, right? So first, let's start with an example. We'll start with a woman called Sarah. And let's say she works in marketing and she has a boss who constantly nitpicks her. So no matter how much effort she puts into her work, it just never seems to be enough. What should Sarah do? My number one tip is to communicate clearly. Sometimes, and actually far too often, misunderstandings stem from a lack of very clear communication. So set up a meeting with your boss to discuss expectations because you have expectations and your boss has expectations. Now, what do I mean by expectations? I mean, every single job has a job responsibility list, right? You have a list of tasks that you are responsible for. But within that, as if you're reading between the lines, there are expectations. There are expectations that you put on yourself for that role, and there are expectations that your boss may be putting on that role as well. So having a meeting with your boss and sitting down with your boss and saying, hey, what are your expectations for X, Y, and Z? Maybe it's just a project. Maybe a project just came up and what are your expectations about this project before I dive in? Here's what I think, right? But just have that conversation in terms of your role on the project or in a group or whatever it is, and define the expectations. Another example is, let's say that your boss is quitting or leaving the company or they get fired, and you have another boss coming in. Your previous boss may have a completely different expectation than the new boss. So if that were to happen, then you sit down again with your new boss and level set on what their expectations are for your role. But regardless, the main message is just strive to get clear communication in whatever way that means to you. Tip number 2, document everything. Keep a record of your work and any feedback that you receive. And honestly, this helps you track your own progress. So later on in your career, when you look back and somebody asks in an interview what you did or what you accomplished, you have this list. But I'm getting sidetracked. But anyway, it's a great tool regardless. So create this list, create a record. So that way, when you sit down to have the conversations with your manager, or if it turns into a situation where your manager wants to say, you know what, you haven't been performing well, or you haven't been meeting my expectations, you can pull out your record and your list and you can say, well, I've been tracking my progress and this is how I see that I'm progressing. But that gives you something concrete to talk about. And in worst case scenario, it provides a safety net for you if things were to escalate. My tip number 3 is to seek support. You can find a colleague, you can find a mentor, just somebody that you trust. If it's in the same industry as you, great. Or someone who knows your boss or may have worked with your boss, even better. Maybe they can offer advice or support, because sometimes having someone to vent to can make a big difference. But really, it's about just getting that external perspective to where maybe as you're venting, somebody can say, well, have you thought about this? Or, well, have you thought about it this way? And again, I always say it's hard to see the forest for the trees. Sometimes we're too close to it. You don't see it. And having somebody from an external perspective who has no dogs in the game, right? Like doesn't affect them one way or the other, so they can be impartial. Having them point out something in terms of a different perspective may cause you to think, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. Maybe I could try that at work. Maybe I could talk to my boss and see how it goes now that I see it from this perspective. So dealing with a difficult boss is very common, and sometimes just as common is dealing with a difficult coworker. So now I'm going to talk about how do we deal with difficult coworkers? Great. I've had this level set with my boss. It went great. We didn't have to escalate it to HR. I didn't even have to use my records. All is great. But now I still have this difficult coworker. Now what? Because maybe that coworker is overly competitive. Maybe it's somebody who's not competitive at all. They're the opposite. They're a little lazy and they're not pulling their weight. Maybe they gossip too much. What do we do? So let's look at another example. We'll call this person April. And April is an IT specialist. And she has a coworker that always leaves her out of important meetings and always seems to take credit for her ideas. What should April do? My suggestion would be talk to the coworker. Again, all about communication. Talk about your responsibilities. Are you both responsible for the same thing? If not, then you're responsible for one thing and she's responsible for another. Be very clear about what the responsibilities are, especially if they happen to overlap. If they overlap, then break them out and prioritize them. I will focus on this. You can focus on that. So they're no longer overlapping. The next thing is to set boundaries. Politely, yet firmly, just tell your coworker, your behavior is unacceptable, because it's important to stand up for yourself. And standing up for yourself doesn't mean you have to yell, doesn't mean you have to be nasty, it doesn't mean you even have to go to HR. You don't have to make it an unpleasant thing. You can do it in a very professional manner, but still stand up for yourself. And then the biggest tip, honestly, is focus on your work, because at the end of the day, we can't control other people. We just can't. But we can control how we react to people. And yes, it's frustrating that somebody may be taking credit for your work, but here's the thing that I will tell you, and it's so true. Your work will always speak for itself. Maintain your own standards, your own integrity, do the absolute best that you can do, perform to the best that you can perform, and it will show. I promise you. And then, of course, last case scenario, get management involved. If you've talked to your coworker, you've tried to set boundaries and they're still taking credit, or they're still not inviting you to meetings, or they're still not pulling their weight, the situation doesn't seem to improve, then bring it to your manager's attention. And at least that way you can go to your manager and say, look, here are the things that I've tried. I've tried to separate responsibilities. I have talked to them. We have set boundaries. I'm still not getting anything in return. Like, I'm not seeing any improvement. Then they know how to step in and help mediate. Now, going straight to your boss is usually not my first go-to that I would suggest. I think it's always more favorable to show that you tried to solve a problem on your own first in a very professional way. And then if that does not work, then go to management and involve management and say, I think some mediation is needed here. Now, those are the two biggest issues that I hear when we're dealing with external people at work. It's either the boss or it's the coworker. But what if, in general, you show up to work every single day and you give your all, you are striving to do your best work, and maybe your boss is great, your coworkers are great, everybody's great. You have no complaints about anybody, but you don't feel valued. How incredibly disheartening is that? You put so much effort in, but feel that you're not getting the recognition that you deserve. And sadly, that's probably the majority of corporate workers. So for this, I'll use an example of Maria, who was, let's say, a dedicated nurse, and she worked long hours, and she just never seems to receive any appreciation from her supervisors. What would Maria do? My suggestion is self-awareness. Sometimes we look for external validation, but far too often what we really need is to reflect on our contributions and be our own cheerleader. I'm going to say that again because I think this is where a lot of people struggle. External validation only goes so far. We look for external validations to remind us of our accomplishments and to tell us that we're valuable or that we're important. But guess what? We need to remind ourselves of our own values and our accomplishments. And especially if our accomplishments align with our values, that's a big deal. And sometimes you have to be the person who pats yourself on the back and says, you know what? You showed up and you gave it your all. Great freaking job. Because you can't always rely on external validation. And it's not that you don't deserve it. You may deserve it. You might deserve a party or a parade. But waiting for somebody to show you that level of validation sometimes may not happen. And I will say this again, it's not because you don't deserve it. It could be that they're simply too busy. It could be that they're too busy looking for external validation themselves to even think about it. There could be 10,000 things going on in their heads, and giving you praise just might not be one of them at that particular moment. But it doesn't mean that your value or your contributions decrease in value. So let me say that again. That does not mean that your value decreases. Know your value, know your worth, celebrate yourself and the effort that you put in. Now, as far as a boss goes, ask for feedback. Sit down and ask for a feedback session with your boss. Say, hey, I've been putting a lot of effort in this area, and I just want to make sure that it aligns with what you're thinking. Am I doing a good job? Do you see any areas in which I need to improve? Should I focus less over here, maybe more over here? And just look for any type of feedback. This not only shows your commitment and a high level of commitment to your job, but also gives the platform to highlight your achievements. So your boss can say, you know what? You're doing a great job. I think you're killing it. Keep going. And honestly, what I've heard a lot is sometimes bosses will turn it on you and say, well, what do you think? How do you think you're doing? And again, pat yourself on the back, know your value, know your accomplishments, be your cheerleader, show up for yourself. And then they'll say, you know what? I agree. I think you're doing a great job. I agree with everything you've said. Or maybe your boss is like, you know, you have been spending a lot of time in this area and I would love for you to focus more on this thing over here. But regardless of what the feedback is, you have structured feedback to work from. And then the last tip that I will say for not feeling valued, seek new opportunities. Because honestly, whether it's a project or a task, whatever it is that aligns with your strengths and allows you to shine, look for it. That could mean looking for opportunities in another job. It could mean going to another company altogether. It could mean moving industries if you need to. But if you like where you are, and if you like what you do, you just feel undervalued and you just want to feel valued, try to look for ways to get involved and shine where you can. Look for projects that have high visibility within the company. Offer your services to other teams or cross-functional departments. And that brings me to another work issue that comes up a lot, which is sometimes you need to increase visibility at work to ensure that your efforts are noticed. And then what I hear usually whenever this comes up in coaching is, well, how do I do that? How do I increase visibility? How do I make sure that I'm being seen by upper management, especially in the midst of all these layoffs and things happening and reorganization and restructuring? And how do I make sure that I'm just not on that chopping block? So for this example, let's use Alex. Alex is a junior analyst who has amazing ideas, but then struggles to get them heard in meetings. And it's often usually told, you know, Alex, you really could contribute more. So what does Alex do to increase their visibility? Number one, speak up. Speak up. Even if you're shy, don't be afraid to share your ideas. Don't be afraid to speak up. Yes, it can be intimidating, but your contributions are valuable and you are there for a reason. And while I would hope that nobody would ever say, oh, well, that's stupid. Why did Alex say that? That's a stupid idea. But you know what? Sometimes people are in professional places. So if that happens, don't be intimidated by that person. You are contributing, and that's what matters. So don't be afraid to share your ideas at meetings. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Number two is to network, build relationships, try to meet people, try to meet colleagues from different departments, not just your own, But network, go to networking events. Even if it's not specific to your own company, maybe you just go to an industry event and just network in general. That can open so many doors and it can increase your visibility. A lot of people like to use LinkedIn for that. Some people like posting on LinkedIn just to be seen as a leader in their industry or an expert in their field. Like, here's my thought on what's going on in the field today. That also works, right? You're increasing your visibility. My third tip is to showcase your work, which goes back to LinkedIn and doing a post. That's a way to showcase your work, but create opportunities to present your work. Whether it's reports that you share to your boss or during team updates, maybe you share through a presentation, anything. Maybe you're sharing something with people outside your organization. I mean, obviously, not sharing corporate information or things that you should not be sharing, but if it's an idea or a blog post or something that just shows that you're a thought leader about something in your field or something that you want to be seen as an expert in, showcase your work. I know with a lot of creatives, that's why you have portfolios, right? To showcase your work. So you can say, here, look at my portfolio. Look at all the work that I've done. Look at all the work that I'm proud of. Now, how many of you have ever been in the situation where visibility is not an issue? You get along with so many different people from so many different departments, coworkers, colleagues, bosses, leadership. It's great. You love the work you do. The clients love you. You're feeling great. The only problem is you haven't had a promotion in a very long time. You feel valued, sure. You're being told you're doing a great job. What would we do without you? But you're constantly still being passed over for a promotion, or you see the promotion go to someone else. Now that's a tough pill to swallow, especially when you feel and you know you deserve it. So let's look at that example and let's take Emily, who works tirelessly for this hotel chain. It's been 6 years and she works and works and works and works and works, only to see that promotion go to someone else. I would suggest that Emily ask for feedback. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be confrontational, but you are allowed to ask for specific reasons why you're not promoted. And you're allowed to ask if there's anything that you can do to improve, right? This is not about storming the castle. You don't have to go kick in an office door and say, well, what the hell? What is this all about? But think about it as approaching your boss in a very calm manner and just saying, I must have missed something. Can you please help me understand so I can use this feedback to grow? After that conversation, based on whatever feedback you get, take that feedback and set new goals. And in all honesty, sometimes you may need to reevaluate your career goals or your career plan. And if you've already done that, have you shared those goals? Have you shared your plan with your boss? The greatest bosses always have a growth plan that they can help support their employees with. Now, a lot of times it's not up to the company or the boss to come up with that plan for you. You have to come up with your own plan and say, this is what I see my growth potential looking like, and I would love your support in these areas. Now, if that doesn't work, then you might have to ask yourself, is this really where you want to be? And is this the right company to get you to where you want to be? Is this the right role for you? Is this the right industry for you? And really take some time to think about your career goals beyond, I want this promotion because it's more money. Where are you going? What is your career trajectory? And then create a plan to achieve that. And this might mean gaining new skills. It might mean taking on different responsibilities. It might mean changing jobs in general. So really look at what your career goals are and look at your why behind wanting those as your goals. And then lastly, when you're being passed over for a promotion, I know this is hard, but try to stay positive. I understand that it becomes easier to feel demotivated, right? It's they don't value me. I'm just going to show up, but I'm not going to really do great work. I'm just going to do the bare minimum, collect my paycheck, whatever. But I'm telling you, that mindset will only make you feel worse. So don't do that. It's easy to become demotivated, but maintaining that positive attitude will actually help you stay focused and resilient. And if you need help with being resilient, again, talk to people you trust. Find your support system, family, friends. Make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Make sure you're taking care of your physical health. Talk to a coach, talk to a therapist, whatever you need to build your support system, do it, because that will help you build your resilience. But don't just check out. Don't just do the bare minimum, because if you're going to do that, you might as well leave, right? You might as well just go to a different company anyway. So try to maintain a positive attitude, because honestly, it will go noticed. It may take some time, but it'll be noticed. And then the last issue that I want to cover today, which is the most difficult of all the work obstacles, especially in the tech world right now. I know it's very, very common, but it's dealing with layoffs. And look, being laid off is one of the most challenging experiences that anyone can have in their career. And it can feel like the ground has just been pulled out from underneath you. It can feel like you just completely lost all footing. And especially when it comes out of nowhere, it feels like you just were punched in the gut. So let's look at the example of Stacy, who has worked with the same company at this job. It was very comfortable, never really thought about leaving because everybody felt like family. Coworkers felt like family. There's very little separation between work and life. Like for her, work was life and family and vice versa, right? So there's no reason to think about going anywhere else. But the company did not have a good year. And due to budget cuts, Stacy is now being laid off. Sadly, this, especially in 2023, was a topic I had with many coaching clients. And I always say the first tip, which no one ever does, which is why it's my tip number one. If you've just been laid off, allow yourself time to grieve. It's okay. It's okay to feel upset. A lot of times when people get laid off, it's immediately the panic mode. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I feel hurt. I feel betrayed. I feel discarded. Where's the loyalty? But instead of truly accepting those feelings and dealing with those feelings, those thoughts immediately turn into, I've got to not feel this way. I need to hurry up and get another job. I've got to hurry up and put together a new resume. And I've got to hurry up and network and post on LinkedIn. And I got to blah, 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 right? It's the next. And I get it. I understand. But I cannot stress enough that the most important thing to do is give yourself a little time to process the loss. And I know sometimes people are like, well, I mean, grieving seems excessive. It's just a job. It's not like I lost someone I loved. In some veins, it's very similar. Grief is grief. A loss is loss. A change to your everyday can be just as detrimental as losing someone you love for some people. And not to get too far into grief in this podcast, but your body feels grief, even if you're trying to not make your mind think about it. Grief comes in many different forms, shapes, emotions. And when you're acting out of desperation, when you're updating your resume, you actually have desperation when you're reaching out. That desperation shows through when you're reaching out to people from your network, and that's not helping you. That high level of emotion is not helping you. Take time to process the loss. Deal with those feelings, whether it's a week or 2 weeks, whatever it works for you. Then go and update your resume. Then reach out to your network. Then follow up with old coworkers or ask for referrals or recommendations. But give yourself time first. I truly cannot stress how important that is. Once you've had time to process, and then you've gone and you've updated your resume, you've reached out to your network, you can reach out to a career coach, you can sign up for a lot of services that help you revamp your resume, it can help you with personal branding if that's something you want to do. There's a lot of opportunities of things that you can do to find a new job once you've had time to process your loss. And once you're not acting from a place of high emotion. Now, for those who survived the layoff, this is for those who stayed and did not get laid off, that is also hard because it's about finding stability. It's about planning your next step because you start to think, wow, I can't believe that this just happened. I can't believe that so-and-so just got laid off. Like, that's mind-boggling to me. How could they let go of that person? That person was indispensable. Does that mean I'm now indispensable? I should start looking. Like, I agree with them. Where's the loyalty? How could this happen? I should start updating my resume. I should start looking on LinkedIn. I should start doing something in terms of securing other opportunities because there's no loyalty here. So let's take another example of Lisa, who just survived the same layoff, but she's left with survivor's guilt and an increased workload. And let me tell you, survivor's guilt of surviving a layoff is a real thing. You feel for the people who were unjustly let go. And then you feel as though you could also be let go at any moment. You question the loyalty of the company. no matter how hard you may work. And now you have this increased workload that you're responsible for with no extra money. Where's the motivation in that? I get it. So my tip to you is take care of yourself. Prioritize your mental health. Prioritize self-care. It is important for you to stay strong and positive. And most importantly, know what your boundaries are. Because when you know what your boundaries are, you can communicate them. Talk to your manager about any concerns you have about your workload issues. Talk to them about if your boundaries are being crossed. Transparency is key here. And it's okay to say, look, I'm all for being a team player and I can take on X, Y, and Z, but this is too much and I can't do this much work, or I may need some help, or I need your support, or I need to delegate this. When there's a big layoff and company-wide huge cuts, I always say to voice your concerns early, as soon as possible. Why? Because you want to make sure that your concerns are being heard before the dust settles. I'm saying this as someone who has been the head of creative operations for years. And as someone who has headed up operations, let me tell you, when making cuts, the last thing you want to do is to make it to where your operations suffer. So if big cuts were just made, and I always call it letting the dust settle, you have to wait for the dust to settle to see where the holes are. And then you see maybe we cut too deep, or maybe we didn't cut enough. But there's that time where you have to see how operations were affected. You have to see how productivity, efficiency, and output are affected. At that point, then you can make any adjustments that's needed. So if somebody comes to me immediately and says, okay, you just cut X, Y, and Z, which affects A, B, and C, how are we going to solve for that? That's helpful because the leadership and the executives that sit on leadership can then say, that's good to know. We didn't know that we needed to take that into account, or we didn't realize that that was something that we missed, or what other potential issues can come from this. And then they can come up with a workaround now that that has been presented. And maybe that workaround is you offer to take on a new role, or you offer to help close the gap. So again, I always say, speak up before the dust settles. And lastly, seek professional development. Use the time to learn skills or pursue certifications. Because if you're genuinely feeling like there's no loyalty, or if you're genuinely feeling like you were just discarded, I can tell you you're valuable. But sometimes in the professional world, the thing that helps to build our confidence is to grow our skill set. And especially if you're feeling like, well, how do I survive another layoff? How do I increase my visibility? All of it. Skill set will help with all of it. So whether you're looking for a new job and you want to explore some skill sets that may set you up for a different position, or maybe a higher position, or maybe the same position, but you just want to feel more grounded and supported in that, look into skill sets. If you're a person who survived a layoff and you're like, well, I just don't know how secure I feel. I don't know if I'm going to be here for the next year. Okay, but then use that next year. What job do you want to have when you leave? What skill sets? What experience do you want to leave this job with? Because focus on that within the next year then. And then all that goes back to career projection, right? What is your trajectory for your career? What do you need to get to the next step? How can your current job or current resources or current network help to get you there? So this is a difficult episode because a lot of the examples are based in negativity. But I do want you to see the silver lining in all of this. All of these tips put the control back in your hands. And always remember that hard times, whether at work or at home, are a part of the journey. What's important is how we navigate them. And you can navigate them by staying true to yourself, staying resilient, seeking support, continuously working on yourself, growing, overcoming challenges. Because when we do that, we come out stronger. So until next time, please take care. I thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to rate it or leave a review. If you have any thoughts or questions, I would love to hear from you. You can email podcast@corehappiness.com. For show notes and additional resources, you can visit www.corehappiness.com. As always, please remember, never let anyone diminish your light. Until next time, sending you my love.